How's it going, guys? Public Safety Network here. I'm going to touch on a topic that I've been seeing a lot more videos pop up around lately, and I decided that I'm going to give my 2 cents. The question that keeps coming up is, what is the difference between a security guard and a security officer? And I'm going to give you the very short answer. There isn't one. Security guard, security officer. Now, people will try to argue with you and say that, well, guards, their job is to just guard a post, why security officers will go around and do mobile patrols and things like that. And I'm going to tell you that's just not how it is. I don't care if your state law has security officer written in statute. For me, that's neither here nor there. It's societally what we are seen as. We're seen as security guards. And in all honesty, there's nothing wrong with that. I don't know why people get so disparaged about being called security guards. It's a job, guys. You know, sometimes it's a very, very important job. Security guards guard nuclear power plants, government buildings, you know, even just everyday citizens. They make sure that they're safe, that they're protected, and that's, at the end of the day, guys, that's what the job is, and there's no shame in that. And so I don't necessarily get why people get so offended when someone calls them a security guard. And so I'm going to kind of talk about some of the arguments that people make and maybe debunk them a little bit and kind of show you my point of view about why I think those answers may not necessarily be correct. One of the biggest ones that I get is, well, you know, we're security officers because we do mobile patrols and we go out and we answer calls for service. Well, I can tell you for a fact I do that. I have a professional dispatch center that I work literally side by side with the police department, as in the fact that a lot of times I'll ride around in their cars with them and we'll answer calls together. So, I mean, that essentially would make me an officer, but it doesn't. And I'm going to tell you why. Now, if you look at the federal government, and they're probably one of the best examples of this, you see things like the VA police or the Secret Service Uniform Division, things like that. Or even the private sector, you have it with things like Amtrak, or you have like the Federal Reserve Police. Now, if you look at things like the Federal Reserve and the VA police, what do? I mean, they're pretty much security guards with powers, and that's not being disparaging to them. It's just they guard, you know, the hospital, or they guard the Federal Reserve facilities, and they protect it, but they have the authority of a law enforcement officer. And so by using the term, well, guards guard posts and officers patrol and respond to calls for service, well, then what do you factor in for these guys? I mean, they're fully endowed law enforcement officers. Under statute, they have the same rights and privileges as any other law enforcement officer would, even the Federal Reserve, though it's private, or Amtrak. So that argument never made sense to me, just the fact that you respond to calls for service just because you're out there patrolling, you know, a larger area doesn't necessarily mean that you're an officer. It just means that you're a security guard that happens to be mobile. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. It's an important job. You know, a lot of times security, we fill in for when the areas that the police can't get to. Police departments across the country are wildly understaffed right now. And so security is a very good way to close that gap and be able to cover areas that maybe necessarily the police don't always have a chance to get to, or especially when it comes to large private properties. You're seeing this a lot more with HOAs and large housing communities that have, you know, 10, 20,000 houses. You know, the police department don't always have the resources to be actively patrolling there. And so by that means, it provides a valued service. But it doesn't change the fact that just because you patrol versus, you know, sitting at a gate or standing at a fixed post doesn't, you know, really make your job any different than a normal security guard. You know, again, just because I've carried the same tools that law enforcement carries, and again, I don't see myself as an officer. I see myself as just a security guard that happens to carry a lot of the same tools that law enforcement does. I mean, it's just kind of how it is, guys. And then another one that I see comes a lot, well, officer sounds more professional. It sounds like it garners more respect. And I can tell you guys for a fact that calling yourself a security officer, or really any other type of officer, it doesn't garner the respect of anyone, the public, other, you know, law enforcement officers, or really anybody. I mean, because when you know, at the end, when that person leaves, you're still going to be the security guard to them. When they talk to, if something happens and they tell the story later, they'll be like, yeah, the security guard did this, or the security guard did that, or security did this. And, you know, so I mean, by calling yourself a security officer, I mean, you're not really garnering any more respect, because in the end, they still see you as a security guard, and you should wear that title with pride and honor, and you should do your job to the best of your ability. That's what I always tell people. Even if you don't like your job necessarily, you should always do it to the best of your ability. And like I said, and you can be an outstanding security guard. And I can tell you this for a fact, guys. The amount of training that I've gone through being with my current department for the last over a year, I got more training in my initial academy or training class, whatever you want to call it, than most security guards get in probably the first 5 to 10 years of their career. And this is speaking from the fact that I've met a lot of people in the security industry, and I've seen a lot of these companies' training standards. And I can tell you by far, I have much more training than they do in a whole slew of topics, and I still am like, yeah, when people ask me, it's like, what do you do? I'm like, I'm a security guard. You know, I'm a security guard that's attached to a police department, but I'm a security guard nonetheless, and you know, and there's nothing wrong with that. So, in the end of the day, guys, don't get hung up on titles. They don't really mean anything. They're just words. I mean, whether it's written in statute or it's just something the company gives you. I mean, at the end of the day, does it really change what you do or how much you get paid or anything like that? So, just kind of my food for thought, guys. You know, when someone calls you a security guard, you know, wear that title with pride. Be like, yeah, I am a security guard, and this is what I do, and this, you know, and I have the ability to help people in my own way. So, anyway, guys, this was just a quick video, hopefully not too ranty, about the difference between security guards and security officers. This is kind of, you know, if you guys disagree with me, go and let me know in the comment section. I know there's going to be a lot of people who agree with me, and there's going to be a lot of people who disagree with me. But, you know, I figured that I would get someone who's been in the industry a while, you know, give out my 2 cents. So, all right, guys, have a good night. And if you're out doing security or law enforcement or whatever and you watch my videos, have a good shift.